Hi, everyone. I'm Will Perdue, former Vanderbilt player, class of 1988. I, along with Robert Sampson, have developed the Nashville Basketball Initiative to try to help support Vanderbilt men's basketball. But what I need you to do is understand what NBI really is. Hopefully, the following that we've put together will help you better understand what Nashville Basketball Initiative stands for and what its ultimate goal is. Also, it'll help you understand the importance of NIL. But at the end of the day, the Nashville Basketball Initiative is built to develop relationships and provide support for Vanderbilt men's basketball. And I'd love for you to be a part of that.
So let's talk about the relationship you developed with Mark Byington from the start when he got to Vanderbilt.
So, what had happened with the relationship that I've now developed with Mark was once Jerry was terminated and Mark was hired, I just listen, I've been vocal, critical of some of the decisions that's been made, within the athletic department. But I've kind of like been a sideline fan per se, not necessarily the approach of a former player. So I felt like if I was going to continue to try to have a voice, I needed to make an honest effort. I made efforts with Jerry, but probably minimal at best. So, that's on me. There's some responsibility on him as well, but I never really cultivated that relationship like I should have. And, I felt bad about that because I knew Jerry as a former NBA player. And I was at the press conference. So I didn't hold up my end of the bargain. So I felt like now with Mark's situation, I really needed to make an honest effort. I needed to be assertive. I needed to be the one that reaches out first and let him know that I would be there for him in order to try to help in any way that I could. And that's kind of how this started. If you go back and think about his opening press conference, he talked about how him and I had a conversation for over an hour that night. And I wanted to make sure that he truly understood what the position was that he took, not just from a coaching standpoint, but the apathy that had, developed when people think about the men's basketball program, and some of the resistance that he was going to get. And a lot of people just saying no. And I wanted to make sure he understood that wasn't because of him, that he had to continue to keep pushing, but yet at the same time, reach out to me, let me know how I can help, and I will do my best in order to make that happen. I've been very impressed with what he's done over the first year. I love this roster that he's put together, for this second season. I think they're obviously much better than the 11th best team in the SEC this upcoming year. He's been able to kind of keep the nucleus together as far as the players that he felt were important to carry him into the second season. So, I always tell people, be careful what you ask for. And he's, in regards to, I need this, I need that, one of the best practice facilities in the country. He's been able to maintain some players, bring in some good players. Now our question is can he follow up on what he did in season 1 to season 2 and take it to the next step? I think he's got a great staff. I think that he's, proven that he can develop players, and he's also proven that he can develop players quickly, and he's going to have to do that with this roster as well. As, it's unprecedented now as we go into this next SEC season, how good this league is from top to bottom. There's no off nights, regardless of what their regular season record may be or their record within the league. It's just unbelievable how strong this league is from top to bottom. And I keep saying this, are we sure this is a football league because of how strong the basketball is and how good the basketball is? in the Southeastern Conference.
This really has been 2 years in the making in a lot of ways through some different versions of what is now the Nashville Basketball Initiative. Why did you feel the need to have this entity in place?
Well, let's go back to the first part of your question about why this has taken so long. Because I just didn't want to start knocking on doors and holding my hand out. Because I truly feel like there's a lot of fans, alumni, student athletes that's kind of the Vanderbilt way. And I kind of wanted to, reverse that in the sense that let's invite people in, show them what we have to offer. And then if they like what they see, you don't have to ask, they'll offer. I wanted to make sure people understood that this isn't just about money. This is about relationships. And we've had to go out and cultivate those relationships. And it hasn't been easy. It's been harder than I thought. And I just thought that, hey, here's Will Perdue. Yes, I'm talking about myself in the third person. And I'm coming back to Nashville and I'm knocking on doors and people are going to gladly jump on board. It wasn't that easy. We've had to convince people. Now, winning helps, and Mark won last year. We've had to convince people that things are different. We've had to convince people that, we're trying to build a society that used to be a major part of the fiber of Memorial Gymnasium. As we've gone through this process, we've heard a lot of stories about how people just grew up inside that gymnasium because of not only the product that was put on the floor, but because of the relationships that they had developed at Vanderbilt with players, with coaches, with other fans. And I feel like that has kind of gone by the wayside because college athletics has become a business and it's become a big business. So we've kind of had to go backwards in order to go forwards. And we're finally getting traction. We're finally getting people to pay attention. And I think people finally understand what the Nashville Basketball Initiative is. It is a relationship-based organization that has been developed to cultivate relationships, to cultivate support. And sometimes that support may be financial, but at the same time to know that the coaching staff has backing, but also the players have a network that they can lean on when necessary, and to also let them know that there is a history there that is a winning history. No, we've never been to the Final Four, but Sweet 16s, putting on incredible upsets. I mean, when I was there, we beat Indiana, who eventually won the national championship. We beat North Carolina. It was just an aura, a place where you wanted to go, you needed to be. It's kind of like the saying must-see TV, right? It was must-watch basketball in person. And we're slowly getting back to that because of this relationships that we've started to cultivate to kind of reintroduce ourselves to over the last 2 years.
You speak to that history piece, and so there's few programs across the country that have just such a plethora of former players that want to be involved in the program, that care so much about the program, and you're one of the many that do just have just such a deep passion that over the 25 years I've known you, you shared with me. How important is it that these former players continue to be part of this and spread the word about what's going on?
I think it's paramount. That's where we start. That's line one, right? And that's what I mean by this is just more than just, hey, we're asking for money. We're here to support. You have to provide that emotional support. But it's also strength in numbers. We've got to get these former players that had a little apathy themselves back on board into the gymnasium. I mean, over the last couple of years, not last year, but leading up to last year, when I would call my friends, and there's a lot of them. When I say friends, I mean former players. They are my friends, and some of them are my best friends. Did you go to the game? No. Do you have season tickets? No. Why? And they would list off numerous reasons, but they just didn't want to put forth the effort because they didn't feel like there was effort in return. So, regardless of what's going on at the school, regardless of what's going on within the athletic department, we need to get these players back together. We need to show the interest. We need to build that strength. We need to get back up in the numbers. Former players are the backbone of what Vanderbilt men's basketball stands for. And we're talking about all ages. We're doing a really good job right now of developing guys and getting guys back into the fold from the 70s, from the 80s, from the 90s. But what we have to do a better job is getting these guys that played after, 2000, guys that were there in 2005, 2010, 2015, 2020. We got to get these guys back into the fold and let them know that they mean something. And they're part of this fabric of what Vanderbilt men's basketball stands for. And that's what CM Newton was all about, and that's family. So our family's fractured. We got to get our family back together. That's just water under the bridge, and basically just allow us to show you, clean the slate, show you what it is we're trying to do, how we're trying to bring people together and get back to that community that we were years ago, where, not only was Memorial sold out, but a lot of former players were there on a nightly basis, and people knew that.
You talk about Sam Newton and such a key figure in the history of this program. But what did he mean to you personally? And what did he do in this community that made such a difference for the success of this program?
Well, first of all, I ended up going to Vanderbilt first and foremost because of CM. My parents were heavily involved in my recruiting process. And you think about this: Virginia, Terry Holland; Georgia Tech, Bobby Crimmins; Perdue, Gene Cady, right? Vanderbilt, CM Newton. I was looking at it, it narrowed down to 4 really good schools, both athletically and academically. So what was the difference? CM was the difference. I said my parents, specifically my mother, was heavily involved in the recruiting process. And, CM was, back in the day when I was coming out of high school, CM was referred to as the gentleman of basketball, the gentleman of basketball. The respect he had from his current and former coaches within the landscape of USA basketball, resonated with my mother. She told him straight out, "You're going to be my son's second father, because now over the next 4 years, in which in my case was 5 years, he's going to be with you more than he's going to be with us. I need him to be with somebody that I trust with my son." And that was the guy. Nothing against Katie or Crimmins or Terry Holland, but it was just something about CM Newton that stood out above the rest. And my mom said that she preferred that I go to Vanderbilt over the other schools. I'd wanted to go to Vanderbilt because it was part of the SEC, and I wanted to go to Vanderbilt because, that was the only school that would come to the state of Florida every year because of the University of Florida in Gainesville, and my parents could actually see me play in person. But think about this. CM Newton developed this. I forgot even what it was called. I'd have to go back and look, but it's called the Memorial Classic or something. There was always a tournament in Nashville between Christmas and New Year's. And the reason why CM wanted to hold this tournament, because now this was the opportunity for the families to come together as one. You got to remember, back then, families had to pay their own freight. They had to pay their own cost. We used to be at Opryland Hotel. We used to have the best country western music entertainers as technically host. And they used to bring in really good teams. My parents would come to Nashville. Barry Booker's parents would come to Nashville. Steve Reese's mom would come to Nashville. Glenn Klemp. I mean, I can go down the list of everybody's family was there because that's the atmosphere that CM wanted. right? And that's why he had this tournament year after year after year, so that all the parents got to know each other. And that helped strengthen those bonds amongst the players, and it showed on the floor. And I also, saw the work that CM put in. He was going to Kiwanis clubs, to doing their luncheons, to, he was never in his office, because every time you go into the office, because Dot Deathridge, who was his secretary slash assistant, would always type our papers for us. We would go in the office and be like, "Hey, where's Coach? He's at this luncheon. He's at that luncheon. He's at the hospital. He's at Special Olympics event. He was a man of the people. He was what Corbin is now, right, with men's baseball. Everybody knows that you see Corbin out all the time. Him and his wife specifically eat dinner out in public every single night in Nashville for a specific reason. CM was just like Coach Corbin is right now. He was out and about amongst the people. He wanted the people to understand how important he knew they were for developing this team, for developing that fan base. He just wasn't relying on, "Hey, we're Vanderbilt. Hey, we're good. Come watch us play." He went out and laid the groundwork, the foundation for these people to have interest, to want to come and watch Vanderbilt play. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is follow his lead.
And that interest is from the fan coming to a game, it's the fan watching the game online, all the way up to the person who might uh, provide the largest donation to support NIL or to support anything behind the scenes that the program needs at this point. Just talk about that whole process, if you will, of it does take everyone to make sure that this thing is successful.
Yeah, it takes a village. I mean, you may not be able to go to a game, but maybe you can have a Vanderbilt basketball hat, or like a shirt with the V on it, just to kind of, or you have one of the flags that you fly on your car as you drive to and from work, and you drive your kids to soccer and basketball and baseball. So people know you're a Vanderbilt fan, and let the people know you support them. And then why do you support them? Right. And so that's kind of what we're trying to get back to. I know there's a lot going on in Nashville. You can go to the Titans, right? You can go to the Predators. I apologize, I don't know the name of the professional soccer team. You can go to the Sounds. There's a lot going on in Nashville. But we also want people to remember, if you really want to see good basketball, and this is no disrespect to Belmont or Lipscomb or TSU, that is good basketball as well. But if you want to see what the NBA is going to be like in a couple years, you have to go to Vanderbilt to watch these guys play, because the SEC now is just filled, it's littered with it's future NBA players, right? I mean, some of these rosters, I know it would never happen, but you wonder how well they would do against, some of the NBA teams that aren't technically that good record wise, but what people don't really understand is how good those players are. But there's players all through the SEC that are going to be going to the NBA. And that's where you're going to catch the best basketball in Nashville, is in Memorial Gymnasium.
So let's talk a little bit about NIL. And right now, revenue share is a huge piece of that, with $20.5 million going to be spread across student athletes at each school, specifically in the Power Four. And 18 million of that is distributed after 2.5 million comes out for additional scholarships and Alston dollars. About 15% of that's what's going to men's basketball. And over the last year or so, the amount being paid to men's basketball was much higher than that. A recent CBS Sports article talked about all the teams across the country paying these high amounts for their rosters. And there was a group of 8 teams that were talked about over $10 million. It included SEC teams, Arkansas, Kentucky. And when you go just a level below that, teams like Auburn, Florida are included, Tennessee among those. Where does that put Vanderbilt?
Well, Vanderbilt's behind the 8 ball, quite honestly, because if you look at the current media rankings that were just released this past week, all those teams you just mentioned: Florida number 1, Kentucky number 2, Tennessee number 3, Alabama 4. Even Texas, 9. Mississippi State, 10. Vanderbilt was the 11th ranked best team in the SEC. Now, we all know that's good enough to get you into the NCAA tournament, but it's going to be tough to win the SEC. That should be a priority for this team. Now, in a recent Yahoo Sports article, Mark was quoted as saying, to be successful, you need both NIL and revenue share. And going into next year in men's basketball, that will be the 26-27 season. We're going to be behind in both. Our revenue share has got to go up. Our off-court NIL has got to go way up, or we're not going to be able to maintain success. Everybody here knows that, and everybody's trying to put together a plan to come up with that. That's where the Nashville Basketball Initiative comes into play. We could be that missing piece. I kind of look at the Nashville Basketball Initiative as quite possibly the AFLAC. As you saw Mark say, you have revenue share, but you're going to need more. I think that the total amount of team rosters and what they cost will go down, but it's still going to be something you're going to have to deal with. Now, Mark now just said recently at Media Days that the things that you're talking about, revenue share, is the kind of base that's going to make up a team right now in college sports. Then the extra part of it is going to be NIL off the court. So, like everybody's saying, your base is revenue share, and then what you can do afterwards will determine how good and how deep your team is going to be.
And there's been plenty of published numbers about what teams are preparing for in football, and the same is going to happen in basketball when we come to March. And SEC teams across the league preparing for $7 to $10 million plus to be distributed through collectives or NIL type situations through appropriate legal means that go through the clearinghouse. But this is above and beyond dollars above revenue share.
Exactly. And we plan on doing everything above board. We're a third party entity, and we will submit and go through the clearinghouse just like everybody else. But at the end of the day, this is the landscape of college basketball. And if you truly want to win, you have to be all in. NIL is an important piece. But make no mistake, I don't want people to think that Nashville Basketball Initiative is just about NIL. It's not. It's about providing for men's basketball. And we hope that someday that we get big enough to where we can now step up and be supportive of women's basketball as well.
Just why is it so important to have a third party entity?
You have to have a third party entity because of how the, and I'll use air quotes, rules are based, which are constantly changing on a daily basis, a weekly basis. But as you pointed out, schools are only allowed to provide revenue share. Revenue share for men's basketball, which is what Vanderbilt is following the guidelines put out by what the SEC recommends. 15% goes to men's basketball. So that's $2.7 million. Now, as we talked about earlier in this discussion, we think and we have a pretty good idea that Vanderbilt's roster is 6 to 8 million, 8 being on the high side, 6 being on the low side. So that means you basically have a difference of anywhere of 3.3 million, right, to 5.3 million deficit. So where does that money come from? The school cannot provide that. All right. So you have to get creative and find ways to do that. And a lot of times that can come from passive forms of income, which we're also cultivating those relationships as well. We know that just knocking on doors and asking people for money doesn't work as far as Vanderbilt fans go. It's not sustainable, right? Because as you continue to do that, the expectations rise. And if you can't fulfill those expectations, then that ability to provide goes away. So we've got to be creative. And that's the responsibility of us as well. But at the same time, that's where now you talk about strength in numbers. The more numbers that we have, the more people we have involved, the less we have to ask for, right? And then a individual doesn't feel as responsible or feel that they have to step up or it's up to them because we have the numbers of people that are willing to be a part of this special group. It's going to continue to take time, and it's person by person, and we're making a lot of phone calls, but there is, again, strength in numbers. And this is something that, I think that the total payroll for a team will decrease, but for institutions or individuals to think that they're just going to be able to provide that $2.7 million is unrealistic, because you are allowed to have a third-party entity, and you are allowed to have ways for players to make more than what they're making just through revenue share. Now, there is a clearinghouse, and we are doing everything above board. We're doing everything with clarity. But we want to make sure that people understand we're not doing anything illegal. We're doing everything by the rules, and we're also going to be very transparent about how and what we're doing. And I think we've done a really good job of that up to this point, and we'll continue to do so. Hey, everybody, thanks for spending the time to learn about Nashville Basketball Initiative. If you have any questions or do want to get involved, as the graphic shows, you can reach us on our social platforms, but also via email. Thank you for your time, and look forward to meeting with you. Go Doors.